Welcome to the Evolution Sports Podcast. We're thrilled to bring on Jimmy McCormick of ESPN. He does fantasy basketball and football work there. And Jimmy, thanks for joining us. We're excited to talk Sixers with you tonight.
Yeah, no problem, guys. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So we want to have this be like an open roundtable discussion. We're pretty much going to start off with the process and when Hinkie came in. So the analytical movement, really, when you think about that in sports and different teams following that path, Hinkie is pretty synonymous with that. So I guess how has it changed, Sixers fans and the fan base moving forward? It seems like everyone is part of this almost like cult now of the process.
I mean, yeah, I think you could argue that maybe it's the second biggest influence, it's like possibly the second biggest influence league-wide, really, meaning mentality-wise, the way that franchises and even fan bases have been now conditioned. I mean, I've been on several other team hardcore podcasts, and we've discussed intensely about the Suns or the Kings. Mm-hmm. And they all appreciate the long view because they've been mired in the 90s lifestyle that we had. I grew up, so I was born in 80. I grew up, a Sixers fan. My formative, really, really engaged years with the Sixers was right when we traded Barkley, right. And right when I realized, holy shit, what a terrible, I remember hearing the news. I was like, this is before the internet. You couldn't even go anywhere to scream. It was Andrew Lang? So I guess my point is that the process was this thing that kind of I think always percolated in our minds, this idea that how could we ever do what the Magic did? How could we ever kind of collect these high-end products? Because we had to swing at those guys. We did. We took this Sean Bradley guy. But my point being, for example, we had the back-to-back drafts of Stackhouse and Iverson, and they just didn't work. Or then even the philosophical mistakes of Larry Hughes. My point being, there was just this long history of this franchise being wayward and shitty. And the irony is that who had the second worst record besides the Sixers in the 90s? I mean, besides expansion teams. I'm not counting expansion teams. The Warriors. So what I'm saying is the Warriors were a real shit dog team, and now they're this empire. Not that the Sixers will be the empire, but they hit goddamn home runs on their lottery picks. Hinkie realized that's not repeatable. That's absolutely not repeatable. So I think I was in Ireland the night the process started, really. I was up on this shitty Wi-Fi in the middle of the night. And when we traded Drew, when that dropped, that was one of the original Woj bombs. When that dropped, even though if you think about it, the net gains on a lot of those moves that night, they didn't actually Nerlens wasn't profitable, right? So I guess long story short, I think we were always prepared for the process. And I think Sixers fans the hardcore were always prepared because we just suffered so long. And the Doug Collins media, I think what happened, if you remember, Doug Collins poisoned us. He did, dude. He poisoned us. That shit was so toxic. I think people forget that he quit that February. It just was terrible. So I think what I mean is he burned it so low. In some ways, Doug Collins helped us because he was so bad at his job that Harris was holy shit, we can't do this again. Let's just give it to the guy who's got the coolest, not the coolest spreadsheet, but the best kind of he actually did a Shark Tank thing and allowed the most innovative idea to win. That's the one thing I'll ever give Harris credit for was that he gave him that little run. It wasn't long enough. I don't like Harris, but I know I took a lot of time here, but I just think that is the one saving grace of the Harris era is that he ever really even allowed that to happen. Because I don't think many owners would even do that. It would have to be a new venture capitalist dickhead who got the team for nothing.
You're 100% right there. It's definitely not the popular NBA mentality. And as you mentioned, the Drew Holiday trade for Nerlens, that was the start of the process. I remember thinking of that trade, wow, that's not something you usually see. A borderline all-star point guard in his prime get traded for picks when you're in
pre-prime even, right? I mean, meaning he was so valuable in theory, so.
And that team was in the playoffs, even though they weren't really contenders with AD and the whole.
It ends up being a bad use of that asset if you think about it, and that's the irony of it. Meaning, it's not that he misread the asset; it's that he was willing to he wanted more, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, Drew, were you always on board with the process, or did you ever waver with that?
I think for me, the highlight of my Sixers was Allen Iverson stepping over Tyronn Lue. I remember all of that. I tell you where I was, everything there. That's when I was like, you know what, these Sixers, I can get on board with it. It wasn't really my thing. I think the process really started when, for me, I was late to the party when it was I really understood what he was doing from an analytical standpoint of when Hinkie broke down and said, hey, you have to have a star to win. If you don't have 1, 2, 3 stars, you got to win.
Right, an anchor.
That's the only way it works. We didn't have one, so he's like, the best way to get a draft, the best way to get a draft pick is the top draft. So you got to be bad to win.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think one of the things that almost gets overlooked with it is that he wanted to zig when others zagged. He always wanted to have the long view and maximize the chances at getting a star, even though we know that all past that are not probable. Like the opportunity of landing one in free agency is not likely at all, especially if you don't have the pieces that's what somebody want to come play with. Tanking doesn't always work. We see the Magic haven't tanked or anything, but they've been in the lottery every year, and they're still in the lottery, and they're not going anywhere.
Because they're not tanking. Because
Exactly.
There's a difference. Because you, like you said, like Harris, it really does come down to ownership. Like Danny LaRue, one of his best points is that ownership is the greatest differentiator off court in terms of teams, like in terms of how it can influence, your outcomes. Meaning, like, what is your owner willing to do? Like Phoenix, in theory, has been tanking, but they have this incredibly over-meddling guy in Sarver.
Yep.
So then it counters really the value of having these high leverage picks. I guess my point being, Harris at least stayed out of the way long enough, and we didn't really hit that many picks, but just the ones that we did happened to be like Jumbo Jason Kidd and Baby Olajuwon, so it worked out.
Yeah, we hit those ones well, and that's key, because if we didn't have those two, it would just be Nerlens and Okafor would be the legacy.
Yeah, for real, if you ever want to feel better, just go on to Basketball Reference and just Google like Basketball Reference player comparison. You can compare any person's season to any age, like in history of basketball. Just go and take like a Kareem, like 23, age 24 season, and a Joel, and just be like, what? And do one with Hakeem too, and you're just like, wow. Like, of course, there's moments where one player is extremely better than the other, like in blocks or whatever. Mm-hmm. But still, it's just like you're in awe. I mean, and that's the idea. Is that Hinkie, like Andrew said, Hinkie's idea was that it's the super high impact players, because. Think about it, like we have to change our mentality, how we think about what a baseball superstar or what a football superstar means in the context. Like even a quarterback doesn't have the influence over a game that LeBron James does. Because he doesn't control outcomes the way that player does. Meaning, the reason Michael Jordan was so great, obviously besides he was great, was just that his floor was so ridiculously high. Because he impacted the game. He would not leave the game without impacting it in a way that influenced a positive outcome for his team. And it's like you can't do that in football all the time. Like everybody else can be shitty around you, and it's still a net negative. I just don't think that's as possible in basketball. That's the idea of insulating yourself with stardom, right? And so multiple stars and stacking stars on stars. And I really do think the narrative changes now with Jimmy. And so just because I think he's a better player even than he aesthetically looks, because sometimes he doesn't look like wow, he's a superstar, but the guy's just really clean at the end of the night. Like he's one of those guys who can have 18 points but have an incredible net positive on the game. So I don't know. My point being, in some ways, the craziest way, Hinkie still left us with like these riches. Like there still are these gems, because the most lasting gems really he got us Simmons as well. That was I mean, let's be honest. The Ingram thing was a narrative created because people needed a narrative.
Right. Yeah, he put us in position to get Simmons, which
to
land two, superstars, and it's just incredible to reach players like that.
Kendall, like the most, like people are worried about like Kendall Jenner. Marshall was the OG Kendall, okay? That's the Kendall that got things started. He's the 10-win Kendall.
This is the Kendall who might mess things up, but
that's the Kendall who got to spend Simmons. Yeah, so it's from Kendall to Kendall.
So I guess you mentioned getting Jimmy Butler, and we used guys that were parts of the process. Covington and TJ are thought of as the long-term. Those were Hinkie's guys when he gutted the roster and pretty much said, I want to maximize all 15 roster spots. Want to see if I can find diamonds in the rough, and I want 15 shots at it. I don't want 10 shots at it with 5 vets. I really want to take, all these shots here. Did you have any sadness seeing Covington go as part of the process, or is it really just we got a third star, we're ready to go?
Well, let's be honest. Like to go back to the Doug Collins thing, like when Hinkie came in, he had to clean up a lot of the trash, like roster wise, and just like on it, like even like and the responsibilities or the obligations the team had to draft picks, right? To the Magic, the stuff he had given away, the Heat. And so I guess my point is now it's actually Brand's responsibility in some ways to clean up the sins of Colangelo, meaning the top heaviness already of the roster, even before the like think about how alpha and beta are bench splits were, right? And they continue to be. Like continues to be the team's biggest issue, is that the starting lineup has this incredible firepower, and then it's difficult to properly stagger them. Now, I think we're getting better with that. But I guess my point in the end is, yes, because it sucked to lose him, because I just think there were so many other outcomes roster management wise where you wouldn't have to give up those assets to, so that's the revisionist romantic part of it, because I wish we could have kept him and been able to acquire this player, because you want to be like really like quantum leap and go back to draft night and just say to the Bulls, instead of that 7th pick, and all that stuff that Minnesota's offering you. Here's the third pick for Jimmy Butler, because that would have been nice. Because like I know he's crazy, but it would have been nice like to then I don't know, maybe the next week trade Covington and something for Kyrie Irving. I'm dreaming, but I'm just trying to say like that's how bad he was at asset management, Colangelo. So I think what's happening now is that we're seeing a cleanup phase. Because look how bad our bench is, dude. Guys, I like advanced stats a lot because I think people don't get that all they're trying to do is just like actually tell us quickly what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. So like VORP and that stuff, it can be flawed, but mostly it's just like here, blah, 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 this divided by this, good stuff divided by bad stuff times this, right? It's a rate stat that tells you how good you are. VORP tells you value over replacement. We have the worst bench in the league, and I'm not being extreme. Like, we literally have a worse bench than almost anybody. So we fall in love with these guys romantically, but we badly need help. But I think the Jimmy trade was an absolute must, because if you really look at the 2019 summer, it's not going to be nearly as fluid or powerful for the Sixers as people may have thought, right? Like, it's not going to be as sweet as we thought. Like, I just think there'll be 3 teams trying to offer Chris Middleton $120 million. It's not going to feel that great.
Yeah, and that's not really the guy I want to give that kind of money. I think getting Jimmy was a must do. Losing Saric and losing Covington hurt, especially Covington. I think Saric, the money that he would have been owed in a couple of years. Yeah, I was worried about him.
That would have been one of those ugly impasses, right? Like, it would have been like 4 years, 60 or it would have been more than that even, really, on the stretch market. Like, yeah, 4 years, 72 for him, and I like him. It just would have been a lock-in moment. And that's not to cut, like, isn't that where we are now as a team, or where the team is rather, is that they're getting close to the landlock point. And what I mean by that is where all these separate islands become one continent. This is your team. This is it. Like, you see Washington does it. Milwaukee's just freed up money to do it. They're going to pay Middleton and Bledsoe. You kind of have to marry your roster in the NBA. I know we talk about risk analysis. Like, what are you going to do the fifth year of Jimmy Butler? Yeah, but what are you going to do? Like, Nate Duncan put it best, even not to keep like giving those guys props, those podcast guys. But the idea being, you can't just look at the last 2 years and say, oh, man, you're getting killed in those last 2 years. The question is, what did you get in the first 3 years? We don't know what Joel Embiid's bandwidth of superstardom is. We know it's right now. So it's not to be dramatic or desperate, but I do think it's not your traditional age 22 and age 24 superstar timeline, because Joel, you want to be a little bit more sensitive to making sure that you maximize it, I think. Like Ben, I can sit here and say when he's 29, he could be much better than he is right now. I'm not exactly sure that's the case with Embiid, just because of how dominant physically he is right now. I'd love to maximize it too. Like, I think Joel's the kind of guy, like the hot goalie theory. I think he's the kind of guy who could like Bill Walton you a championship. I do.
Yeah, I think this
get in and get weird. You know, like not this year, but just get in and get weird kind of thing. You know.
Yeah, I think two things here. Buyout market's going to be huge, just like last year. I think team players will want to come to Philly, not only because the team is in contention, but they can actually get minutes easily. We can sort guys in very easily. I know that Korkmaz is getting a lot of run right now, and Shamet, but I think those guys could be replaced by vets. And then looking at the free agency next year, we should have some money available, especially, and that's why I want to move on from Fultz. Yeah, figure out that $9 million.
It almost seems like almost just seems opportunity cost wise. Because think about it, isn't the tier of guys, like think about it, Andrew, even like think about the tier of discussion you're talking about from that $18 to $21 million range that we're talking about to that 29. You know, like now you're talking about a different player. Now you're talking about rooftop meetings in Los Angeles where you get innuendo about what fresh juices they had with Kevin Durant. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like the good shit. Like you hear about like Kawhi Leonard had brunch and he had Scrapple. You're like, what? You know, I'm just kidding, but like, you know what I mean? Like seriously, that's how you get those 4-star meetings. Seriously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, getting that fourth person is going to be huge, and whoever that is going to be here probably for a while and really set this team up going forward.
It'll be a 3+1 at the minimum, right? Like, meaning like the Sixers aren't going to sit there and do some 2-year deal with somebody. But then there's also this idea that like, it depends. I think, don't you all guys also think like maybe look, if you have to free up money for a max player and they really want to come in, it's a true max player. You do that no matter what. My point is, outside of that extreme outcome, I don't hate the idea of giving Thad Young like a 1-year mid-level, and then, you know, I'm just trying to say, and then giving like Marcus Morris. I'm just trying to say like, bringing in like a Patrick Beverly, bringing in like an actual 4 or 5 person group of people, because I think we do have the 3 superstars. I don't think we've actually seen the superstars surrounded with the proper amount of role players to tell us even what the ceiling is. Like, meaning, I think we talk about how it hurts your floor. I think it hurts your ceiling not to have like guys to go to. We saw why it has to be the right guys is my point. Those aren't even the names I'm talking about. Like, it just has to be the right guys. My question is, do you give $28 million to Tobias Harris, or do you break that up into like 3 or 4 kind of attempted profit players?
Yeah, I think if to kind of go with that is if you can take almost on Hinkie model, if you can take 3 or 4 swings to really, right, like you said, we have the worst bench in the league, so that's got to get fixed. it'd be nice to be able, if you can bring the floor up, but also uncap the ceiling of saying, hey, we've got 3 or 4 more guys to work in the rotation, give you some options so it's not all on Jimmy Butler, all on Embiid, all on Simmons, or kick out to JJ Redick for 3 all day. You just want to give it some options. So you're going to spend a ton of money on one dude, hope it works. If it doesn't, like you said, we get landlocked and you get married to a roster.
No, that's exactly right. It's like it almost is like, don't you guys wish we could just like DM Hinkie and be like, what would you do? Like, what would you guys, what would you do? Like, I really do. I really wish that I wish he had the opportunity to have done a lot of these things. Obviously things would look so different right now, but I still just feel he wasn't given the opportunity to convert. And I think there's also this weird myth now, because like with the Sashi thing in Cleveland, where it's like you can't let the nerds finish the job. They can only set you up. It's like, no, like even the bullshit like revisionist will tell you, well, Hinkie was really good at tearing it down, but he couldn't build it. It's like, how do you know? He drafted Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons essentially. Like, he put them in position for 2 narrative shifting players. And my main point about the Sixers anyway is that, like, I'm almost more tempted to go the star route this summer to try to get that 4th guy than anything else, only because I don't think this team really peaks until Ben's like 24 or 25 anyway. And so, not to say that you shouldn't go after, but what I mean is get yourself a Tobias Harris, get yourself somebody else. But once Ben does hit that next level, because that's what they'd be waiting on, is for Ben to hit like another level. And I think he does have it. And I think people are wrong that it has to happen the way that they expect. It doesn't have to happen like he has this jumper and he's pulling it. It really is, he has to become this incredibly dominant, like Draymond is what he has to be. He's got to be an incredible high post passer. He's got to watch a lot of Marc Gasol tape, and he's got to do just become much quicker with how he's making his decisions. He's too much point guard in the post. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just telling you, there's ways. If that guy gets a jump hook, like a little turn, you know what it is? I think Ben Simmons has to get craft. And if he gets craft to his game, like more craft and more nuance, I'm telling you, I think if he's scoring 20 points and 8 and 8 and the defense he plays, this team can win a championship. I think that the Ben stuff has been really interesting this year, like the backlash. I think it's really interesting. And I don't think people understand that there was gum in the engine with Fultz.
Yeah, I think starting Fultz made sense for his development, but it did probably get Ben off to a bad start this year. I do want to ask you guys both a question about Hinkie. So we talked a lot about Hinkie, leaving and how it's changed ever since. We know that the NBA pushed the Colangelos on the Sixers, but what do you think was the biggest reason besides owners getting mad? And, I think a lot of other GMs didn't like that, hey, this guy keeps making draft picks and he doesn't have any pressure to win now. He's pushing it down the road and he's not actually going to be evaluated on his job for a while. But I guess, what do you guys think were the main factors there that resulted in Hinkie eventually resigning? And what could he have done better?
Andrew, go for it.
For me, you said I can't say that the other owners were pissed that he was really – I was making a mockery because he wasn't. Man was playing 100% with the rules, doing what he needed to do. It was about getting assets, and if the asset that you had wasn't worth what you thought it was going to be and what you needed, moving it on for somebody else. He was king of flipping second, third-string quarterbacks for second or thirds when they had 2 or 3 good games. To me, it's the same concept. That's all he was doing. So I really think it was other owners upset that here's a guy who came out and said, hey, we are going to be bad, historically bad for a few years so we can make our run. I'll take 2 or 3 years of suffering up front so I can have, hopefully 2, 3, 4 parades that I'm taking off work to come up there and having a great time. So for me, I really think it was other owners were upset that he was playing the model and told them to their face. And they just couldn't handle that, hey, I don't want somebody else to do this because now we got 2 or 3, 4 bad teams all tanking, trying to do that same purpose. Yeah,
it was ownership for sure, but it was also, I think, like owners rather, like there was the owners collective, but I also think that Silver himself was pretty meddling. Like I think this is probably the biggest stain on his legacy, and like I actually think that Stein gets some bad flack for for example the Chris Paul trade. I don't think people really understand that his job was to be the owner.
Right.
Like his job was to be the counsel of the owner in the way the CBA works. Like his job at that night wasn't to be the commissioner. It was actually to represent and he said, no, this trade isn't as good as they could do. And he was really conceptually right. And in any case, my point is, yeah, you're right. I think it was pressure from all sides is my point. And it was like an erosion kind of thing where like, it wasn't like one conversation where they came up to him and it was like an intervention with Harris. I think it was like over and over at these meetings. They were just like, you suck, you suck, you suck. This is ridiculous. And it also it got to the point where it was completely kosher for other team executives to just talk shit about Philly.
Yep.
It wasn't even behind doors anymore. anymore. This wasn't at the meetings in hotel rooms and lobbies in Florida. It was on ESPN. Like they were just saying this is a mockery of the game, and I agree. And so my number one, and I would tell Sam this to his face, like if I could ever have the pleasure of talking to him, would be, meaning if we talked about the Sixers, it wouldn't be the first thing I say. I'm saying it would be that he missed the nuance of how to dress up a shitty roster.
Yep.
Like it's like the DJ Augustine theory. Like meaning like if you just had DJ Augustine, he could have just like had hollow numbers. We would have. I think he a little bit misread the extremes of how much you had to look that bad.
Yes.
Like there was ways to rotate the rosters that much, but have a little bit better of a veteran spine because it's the NBA. You could have overpaid guys. Like it easily could have happened, and on short deals. I never would even say to sign 3 years to some. I would never do a Bayless thing. I would do. My point is there could have been 1 and 2 year deals with the Augustines of the world, right? And they could have still lost 57 games. It just. He didn't dress the pig up enough so that the idiots didn't get loud enough. And I just think it stank too much. And like, it got to the point, it's almost like he had a grow operation and didn't realize that like, that the snow was melting on the roof. You know what I mean? Like, meaning what I mean is like, he didn't think about all the, what I'm saying? He didn't think about all of the logistics of how could you fly the plane this low? You know what I'm trying to say? Like he could have, I loved what he did. I'm saying, but even at the time, I was saying I didn't care, but I was saying aesthetically he should do a little bit more. Like he should have traded for like a Pat Beverly. You know what I'm saying? Like traded a couple seconds to Houston that year when they were trying to get rid of him. He should have just done a little bit more because I don't think he realizes he wanted the extreme guarantee, but I don't think he got as much. And who am I to tell him what he didn't get? But what I meant is the difference between like 15 wins and 21 wins wasn't really actually going to game your odds to the point where it would put you out of the discussion for any of this good stuff. So it's just like. But it could have put you out of position to have the job.
Yep.
Like it got too extreme.
It did, yeah. The biggest mistake, you hit on the head, that the optics of it, he underestimated the problem that would be. That if you just went out there and signed a veteran, like you said, expensive deal for 1 year, and to the public, it makes it seem like, okay, they're not fully tanking, but he knows that guy's not.
Pretend. Beauty is that he didn't pretend, and I know it. Like that's what Andrew said. Like. There's there's an unvarnished beauty to the fact that he was like no,
right?
I'm not gonna.
I'm gonna come out and say what I'm doing.
He's like I'm going to the prom with a bond. Like he just did whatever he wanted. He made his own rules. He was like I'm driving to whatever. Like I'm not wearing a suit today. You know what I mean? Like he just lived. He just did what he wanted, really, in the best possible way. And that's what we loved about it because it was cavalier, right? It was, and also like people don't talk about this enough. He was the best trader for 3 straight years. It wasn't single moments. He won the margin moves and the big moves. He was the best trader. We never got to see him make the trade on the power market. That's what I thought would have been awesome. Like who would he have gotten? Like I kind of feel like Kyrie Irving might be a Sixer, meaning just like he's a weirdo, like he's a maestro. I think that like that the Ainge trade was like I hated it because it was so Hinkie-ish. I was like, damn it,
right?
He Hinkied us, son of a bitch. He got me on a Hinkie.
Yeah, even if Fultz was Tatum and Tatum was Fultz, he never would have traded the Kings pick to move up 2 spots.
No, never. Because you know why? That was such a poker move, and that was such the move of, especially as the burners came out, the narrative became so clear. The motivation behind that was he wasn't able to install D'Antoni, so he couldn't put his fingerprint on the roster right away either. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead, and this is my splash, all in. And over probably overpriced Merlot, he convinced Josh Harris we're going all in and was like super excited. And really, if you think about it, it's not revisionist to say when the reporting comes out that he didn't really do his due diligence or research on the guy anyway. He trusted consensus is the point. Yeah. He literally he read magazines. And don't get me wrong, I was all about the guy, but that's also I'm just a dude. It's not my job to make these super high leverage decisions that matter forever.
Those 6 burner accounts that you can just check Twitter to find out if you did a good job either.
Yeah, well, and I read every single word they said, and every single word, every comment board discus thing that they ever wrote, because it was not just her for sure. Dude, there was these crazy. There was it wasn't just one. There was 2 or 3 long paragraphs about who was the one guy, the guy from the '80s for Dallas. It wasn't Adrian Dantley. It was one of those type of guys. It was maybe it was Adrian Dantley. It was somebody who just scored his ass off old school, and he was a great player. I was like, bro, this is you. You were 24, and this is your window. This is when you were in the clubhouse, and he gave you a high five.
Right.
And you guys you guys had a 6-pack at the hotel. My point is,
he was my boy.
Exactly. That's my boy, Blue. So it's long story short, I actually feel like we're in a pretty good place though, just because you have the high end players, and that's really like I so much rather have to figure out the margins than figure out the anchors. Because like chasing sucks in the NBA. Like I was at the game last night, and yeah, they like first of all that team is going to give you problems because they can run 8 NBA players at you and or 10, and we had 3 last night or 4 NBA players. You know, so
right.
Like impact players is what I mean. So you know, my point is. The Sixers will be very suspect until they're not, but I think once they get strong, they're going to be awesome. And even like you said last year, the buyout market, it annoyed me when Colangelo got credit for that because it was almost like you got credit for having 2 spots that could afford 28 minutes to people in March. Do you ever think about that? That's crazy though. If you think about it,
it's not a good plan to go into March with. Like, 28 minutes. Let me get a buyout, guy. This is totally going to help. I mean, it's good to help the roster, but like you shouldn't have two spots at 28 minutes that you can just plug and play.
That's my point. Like you go to your sales director, you're like, dude, sales are really up. You're like, yeah, I added a couple routes. You're like, what do you mean? Yeah. He's like, I just wasn't, selling enough shit. Like it's like that means you're bad. It means you're bad. And this year it's not the same point. There's a reason we're this shallow is because they consolidated. And I think the point is too, just that like what Brand did is the Butler move puts you in a different conversation of what might be able to happen even this year. Because I think like a Wes Matthews might get bought out. It might actually happen. I don't think the trade market for these. You know what it is too? The sins of the 2016 guys. People aren't going to really be able to trade for them. You can't trade for Robin Lopez. He's making $14.3 million. There's some guys you just can't trade for because they're just like, no, we can't. Wes Matthews is what I meant. He's making $18 million. You're like, can't do that. Like you can't. We can't trade you half our team. And that's the other thing too. It's odd right now, isn't it, guys? Because we don't have many moving parts. We're so used to having all these moving parts. It's like you can trade maybe Korkmaz, you can trade Justin Patton. I'd actually rather hold on to him. Like I don't know. I think the buyout market, like you guys, it's going to be ugly until it's not. But one name that I'd love to get right now in an exemption deal, number one move right now, December 15th, would be David Nwaba from Cleveland. Really good perimeter defender. Can't shoot. Doesn't matter. He's like a bulldog. He's basically what Zaire was supposed to be. And he's a minimum guy, and he's under $2.8 million, and we have the exemption. So I would just give them a second and be like, give us your dude.
That's definitely an option.
We need like a human body, we need a body.
I want to hit one more thing on Hinkie, but I think we first have to talk about how all of these Sixers first-round picks are injured, whether they're injured when we draft them or not. What's going on with Zaire is crazy that he may miss the whole season now because of this.
Oh, he's going to miss the whole season, you'd think, right? I mean,
yeah. From what I've heard, he's lost a ton of weight, too, with this infection.
Yeah. I think, I haven't even seen pictures of him. I think he's just, putting a ton of weight back on right now would be the plan. It's just crazy. It's cryptic and weird. I mean, here's the craziest thing. The Ben one is the most normal, right? Right. Joel's number 2 most normal, and that was 2 years and, an odyssey of Shirley Temple's weight gain. And, I don't think people remember. You guys do. But I don't think people, from the outside, know what the feeling was. That July when we got that second reading, I was like, that was there's an organ in my house playing death music. It was like, what the hell? It was like, he's out again, and they explained it, and Hinkie was like, we're sorry, we suck. And I was like, are you kidding me? We've Jahlil Okafor. Everything just felt so bad going into that year. And Center City was the tagline. We had 3 centers. I was like, 2006 to 15 guys. What are we doing? Steph Curry just won a championship. And we were centers. So. I guess my point is,
I want them all.
I guess my point is it was really ugly not that long ago. And it's really not that ugly now. And so, somehow we got out of this terrible GM based on the most embarrassing scandal in NBA history because of the most craziest odyssey of all time through a rookie pick. It's like Greek tragedy type stuff, guys. It's really not normal. It's really very abnormal.
Between the collars, wrong collars, the Twitter scandal, you can't come to Philadelphia unless you're going to sit out the first year. It's crazy.
Guys, the wife of the GM was handling a minimum of 5 social media handles that were relaying basically team espionage, right? That's the second craziest story in the Sixers this year. It might be the third because another guy almost died from a sesame allergy. That might be the third craziest story on the team this year. That's incredible. That would have been the number 1 story of the decade for somebody.
I remember listening to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, and I'm rocking their That's a Normal Color shirt. But listening to that live as the updates came through, okay, we've got some news. Okay, we've got more, and now we've got 5 accounts. And the Ringer posted this thing, and now we're having...
I sent legs half that stuff. I couldn't put my name on it, but I overnight that night before, I knew it was the wife.
Yeah.
The night it came out, I knew it was the wife because I had just finished reading 7 Seconds or Less, which is the book about the Suns. Yeah. And it's very in-depth about the Colangelos because it's about their whole empire. And it was about how they got D'Antoni was because Colangelo had been scouting so much in in Italy that he actually had a condo in Europe. He had a condo in Milan, and he liked the high fashion and cappuccinos, and he was away from daddy. And that's where he met his wife. And it was like in the late 80s, and D'Antoni's was a player, and D'Antoni's wife was best friends with his wife. So they were road dogs. And my point is that this thing that account went so hard for D'Antoni, and it mentioned something in Italian about him and his team. And I was like, it posted something, and I was like, yo, something is up, dog. Like, this is so weird. This is the weirdest shit in the world, being a Sixers fan. I love it.
I love, too, how the Sixers fans basically uncovered even more, and they became the detectives over the next week or so, and they kept pulling out things, and then the Sixers would respond to stuff. But it really was the fans going beyond the original Ringer report.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And, like, in some ways, the Ringer was cool for setting it up for the public, but I also still have reservations thinking about how, like, guys, you could have done this, too. You could have actually done the complete story. And that's no shot at Dietrich or anything. They also had to get it out. I get it. You know, like, doesn't matter. It was a crazy odyssey. It seems like 5 years ago that happened. I don't know about you guys, but like I don't even remember pre-Jimmy. Like it's like a different world. Like it's like a different. It's like a Jurassic line. It's like a demarcation point. Like it's a different like society for me.
I think it's helped with the whole Fultz situation too. It's not. It's no longer definitely. He has to be the third star.
No,
it really is an afterthought now.
I completely agree. And I don't know about you guys, but my ideal like. You can't always get your ideal. My ideal would be like to try to convince somebody to give us like their post hype guy, like their second draft. Like I would want to get like John Isaac from Orlando. I
don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be nice.
I'm just giving you my like.
It's dream world here. Come on now.
And you know what it is? It's crazy. It's like dream world. It's like I hope I can get that Orlando Magic guy who's averaging 6 points this year.
He probably never turns into anything.
For the guy who's got the magical shoulder injury and doesn't know how to shoot a free throw.
It's like guys, I'll trade you your mystery loser for our mystery loser. Okay.
Don't worry, I'll throw in a 2022 second. All right, I'll get it done.
Seriously, like we will tell everybody that. It was our idea that you drafted Elfrid Payton.
Exactly. All right, cool. So one more thing on Hinkie real quick, and then we'll transition to a few broader NBA questions. And, Jim, we really do appreciate your time again.
All good.
Last thing on Hinkie. So favorite moment of the whole Hinkie hiring and his legacy. I guess we'll go around the room. I guess, Drew, you want to go first?
Oh, man, maybe go first on this one. Yep. I love the entire process because to me, Hinkie's an immortal god at this point. So he could come out and be like, yeah, I didn't do any of this. And I would have been like, no. It's all you. It doesn't matter. I think the thing I always remember most is his basically goodbye. And we can swear on this podcast. So fuck you letter.
That was mine.
Damn it. Oh, gotcha. Now, so you should let me go first. His like, hey, I did it my way. You guys didn't like it, but I still did it right. If you don't like it, eat it.
No, it's true. My favorite moment, like very specifically, was the Kings trade. Because when it first came out, the details were just like super simple and normal, and it just seemed like a shitty NBA trade. It was like the Sixers got like Jason. Who was the guy? What was his name? He's from the Philly area. Like they got
Thompson.
They got Jason Thompson. They took the power forward from the Kings, who like was just sitting on this terrible deal. They took his money to clear up the Rondo money, right, for the Kings, and they take on Stauskas. And like the way it trickled out between Woj and Lowe that night was just this random summer night. It was like July, right? It was like random as hell. It was like late into free agency. And it was just a robbery. And like after it was all said and done, like by midnight that night, like all NBA nerds were like, Hinkie just savaged these guys. like it just felt so good because it made no sense. And it was one of those points where he constantly was making himself available. And it was almost like the way that he would sell these. He optimized opportunity costs like almost like nobody had ever seen before. And that was really cool. Like what we ended up doing with that was destructive. But like that Kings pick in itself was the most valuable pick to be traded, in the last like 5 years.
Yeah, there was nobody on the other side of that trade saying that the Kings made a smart move. It really was wanted money to go spend on. Was it Wes Matthews that he spent on and Rondo?
He wanted to be able to have money to offer to Iguodala because Iguodala was in this weird impasse. So what he did was he basically just drove up the price of Iggy because that's when Iggy got the $60 million. Iggy was coming off the MVP of the finals. Evan Turner talked about this on Bill Simmons' podcast, specifically about this, about how Iggy worked the Kings and got $70 million offer from them. And they wanted to save that money. And then they were like, shit, we have to use this. So they gave it to Rondo. They gave Rondo like 1 year, 12. And it was disgusting. I think they gave, what's his name? Asik? No. He just played. Who cares? They were terrible. The Kings. Yeah. And it was an amazing thing. And also just like the swaps and everything. It just like, that one night created so much kind of like process. It was so processy. It was pure process. And the next day, I don't know about you guys, but I was on YouTube watching like 17-year-old Stauskas hit like threes in He had this one. I don't know if you saw that one. He had the one video when he was just even a Michigan recruit, and he was like swishing. I was like, this guy's got it. He was
I was convinced. I thought he was good. I'm like, he's JJ. He's not.
Yeah.
JJ.
No. I did think he was like a pretty good value player, but the more you looked into it, like even though the Kings are kind of the Kings, there still was a reason he was a throw-in. So, but good for him. I'm glad he's doing well. Like I'm glad, and that's one thing too we're not doing anymore. Like we're not using the two ways aggressively enough, I think, and we're not churning the end of these roster spots enough. I don't understand why we're not kind of like poach other teams' G League guys that aren't protected. Like why aren't we just bringing in like where's like a bouncy weirdo big guy that we just bring in to see if he can play? We're not in 10-day season yet, but I'm saying once we really get into 10-day season, I think we should be active.
Yeah,
it's not like the bench can get worse.
That's my point. Like audition, that's how these 10-day things work. That's how like you end up with like a weirdo, Shelvin Mack type guy. Like those guys are on the fringes of the league, and then every once in a while they stick back into the league. Like I don't know. I just think, and maybe we'll get there. I just think right now it's a static point, and that's fine. But we're seeing right now why like we're getting exposed by backup guards, and like Dinwiddie's great, but we're getting exposed like all over the time. Like that Cavs game, even we were just getting absolutely cut up, and like that's the measure of depth.
I think my favorite Hinkie moment. Let's see, the SI piece that came out that mentioned that like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that mentioned that he tries to avoid decision fatigue by having the same outfit, so the same suit in his closet over and like three of them. Yeah. That's just an awesome embodiment of who he was. Definitely speaks to his ability just to be different and want to just eliminate that thought process so he can get on with his day sooner. Jumping back to, I guess, NBA as a whole. So we talked about, we've seen a huge rise in analytics in the NBA. We've seen the three-pointer get prioritized. We talked about big men and the Sixers having 3 big men when a lot of teams have no big men that, play a lot of minutes.
Traditional bigs, right?
Yeah. Where do you guys think, we go from here? Is there any other avenue that teams that are more progressive can look at to say that's an advantage that's the market's not catching up to yet, and I can get ahead of that?
Like the great inefficiency. Like I that's kind of been a discussion this year, basically. Like, not that we're tired of the space and pace era. I think a little bit of it is the switch, is like properly nuancing the switch thing.
Okay.
Like I think the most repeatable part of last year's kind of theater of greatness, which would be like the Western Conference Finals, and not really the finals, because that really obviously was just a mismatch. But the reason the Cavs won the first one too was just incredible switch defense or incredible tough defense. And I do think that's kind of the next level, is like how do you counter the offensive era? And switching is, and like fighting over screens. So it's like having like Ariza, I think, is overvalued, but I think he represents an archetype, like a type of player that people want. And it's the Covington. Honestly, Covington is now the perfect archetype of it. The guy who can shoot 39% from 3, regardless of what idiot fans think. That's what he shoots from 3. And like, it's like variance be damned. Like math doesn't work the way you want it to. Like 1 for 8 does not mean you shoot 1 for 8 every night. So right. My point being, he's this like that's the new archetype. And I think having a bunch of those Swiss Army knives would be the next player inefficiency, because like you can't create another Steph. Like you can't create gravity. Like it's stupid to say that, because the skill set of pull-up shooting is the craziest skill set. It's the least efficient shot you can take, basically, and it's the most dangerous shot because no one can guard it. And it's what makes Harden an exceptional offensive player, even when you don't think he is. You can watch a Harden game and be like, ugh. And then like the game score is like 35, which is like elite. And then like his true shooting is like 630, and you're like, what? And it was like he had, and I know it's not a good example this year, but my point being is that like ugly can be pretty if you're making the right decisions. And that's the other thing too. So and this ties into it. It's learning truly adhering to shot quality on both sides of the ball. That last year, the Rockets were the best team in making you they trusted that you taking the shots that weren't good would work out over the long run. And what happened is sometimes that burnt them, and it burnt them in the small sample of the playoffs, because they would give up mid-rangers all day, and then they met Kevin Durant, and he was like, okay. He's like, I can do that. And not everybody's Kevin Durant. So I think that's the idea, is forcing teams into the worst shots possible and taking the best shots possible. That sounds simple, but the switch athletes are the way to get there, because you need to be able to have and Embiid and Embiid doesn't create a problem for you, because you can feed him. He only has to switch down low. But my point, more importantly, is the Sixers desperately lack switch athletes.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem with them right now. Drew, do you see any inefficiencies out there that teams may start to look at exploring more?
Well, I think Jimmy hit the nail on the head. Is we've got so proficient on offense where we can bomb threes from pretty much inside half court at this point. And
everybody can, right? Like your third big can shoot 38% from 3. You know what I mean? Like your Frank Kaminsky's of the world can come in and hit 6 threes.
Yeah, so everybody can shoot threes now. So obviously you're way behind the times if you got a big guy that just stands in the middle because it's not going to work. So now you really have to look at where's the next set of inefficiencies. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jimmy, where it's switch athletes. Do you have somebody that's athletic enough to be able to guard multiple people? And I think that's what makes besides the ridiculous set of skill sets like the Durants and the Jameses and those kind of guys that they can switch off and guard anybody regardless of who they are. Yep. Now, granted, they are extreme freakish athletes, so it's not really a great example. But
but like PJ Tucker can guard can pretty much competently guard 3 to 5 outside of like a real 5. Yeah. You know, like I mean, he can like if Jaren Jackson's in there at 5 or Muscala, he can throw them around. It's those guys are super valuable. And this brings me to like I think the Sixers need to become the bad boys. I really do. No, I say like the efficient bad boys, like shoot threes, but you have to play into your strengths. Like Joel's a nasty bastard. He's not fun to play. Ben's like kind of a nasty bastard. He's an Australian guy. Like they're not that. Like he wants to elbow you. And like Jimmy's, what I'm trying to say by bad boys is like the way that the mentality that the Rockets had last year in that Western Finals felt like they were the bully. That's kind of what I meant. It's like I don't mean like outlandish bad boys, but like attitude and like Patrick Beverley's and tough guys, tough shooters. Like that's the word that they use in the Spurs, and it's the word that Brett has used before. Tough shooters. Danny Green type player is what I mean. Like that's what the Sixers desperately lack. And even Wes Matthews is that. Wes Matthews was on the same depth chart. Wes Matthews was in like Jimmy Butler's wedding, I think. Like they're like road dogs. Like they went to Marquette together. My point is the Sixers desperately lack those guys, but we can get there. I really do think that. I think like you could add those guys, but bad boys is the way to go. Trust me. Like because think about it. That Heat team. Imagine like that Heat team came in last year, and we were a much more talented team, and they made this play some of their ball. And I think it wasn't dumb ball though. It was intelligent physicality, and I think we could do that. Like I don't want to be that physical, but my point is, if you notice the way that when we win games, we like beat the shit out of people. Like we do. Joel beats the shit out of people, and Ben beats the shit out of. What was that game a couple nights ago where Ben beat the shit out of them? Detroit. He said they couldn't handle me physically. When Ben wants to beat the shit out of you, we win games. I really mean that. I really think some of the most entertaining games we have this year against Detroit because I think you're right. We got so well. So. Yeah, with the Embiid no guards.
I find it more exciting when we talk more shit too. But
yeah, that's true.
It's just the way it's more fun for me sitting on the couch because I'm.
No, when it's loaded, it's cool, and I think we could bring an attitude. What I'm trying to say is that like we're gonna get into these like tight series and like Boston and stuff. What I'm trying to say is Boston bullied us last year, guys. They beat the shit out of us. They kicked us off. And let's be honest, the Zaire pick was a direct response to Marcus Smart. It really was. Like. It was to say we need to be able to have somebody that we can unleash on you defensively, like that's aggressive at the 1-2 position. Because I know that we say he's like a power forward in college. I swear they think he's a 1-3 guy. Yeah, you know, like his job is to be 1-3. And my point is, they theoretically, I think, wanted to have this theory where it was Ben, Zaire, and Covington, and whatever Fultz was going to be, and they were like, "Holy shit, we're going to switch on everybody."
Right. Yeah, I think they had much bigger plans for Zaire.
Well, that's what's missing, right? Think about it, guys. Like Zaire and Fultz are missing from the portfolio, and that's what was supposed to be the switch ability of this team, right? The new, like that dynamic that's not here, the bounce. Where's it's like the Eagles this season. They didn't have bounce. I'm just saying, like no, but you can see it early in the season. Like you can see when a team has juice on the field, like speed. Like I was the high school football director for ESPN for like years. Like I used to like cover recruiting, and like. Even at the lowest levels, guys, the highest levels, like you could be at the top camp in the country, like the juice does show up. You know what I mean? Like it does, and you see it. And like you didn't see it on the field with the Eagles, and you don't see it on the bench with the Sixers. Like we don't. That's my point. We don't have any of that like Jeremy Grant flavor. We don't have a guy who's going to fly out of nowhere and take the game over. So, but I think there's a real agenda to go get your George Lynches, go get your dirty glue guys. That's what the Sixers need right now is dirty glue and shooters. But like that's why Justin Holiday to me is perfect. He's very much a Holiday. And what I mean by that is that he's like a pretty tough, smart player. Do you know that he's like third in the league in minutes and has the 4th most made threes in the NBA? Justin Holiday.
I would have had no idea.
Yeah. If that's a trivia question, I'm like, God.
Yeah. No, they're playing him into the ground. Like they're playing him like Thib style, like 37 minutes. But he's a $5 million player. He's 29 years old. They don't have his bird rights. I'm just saying that's like he can't be traded till December 15th. That's the move that, like, if I ran the team, I'd be like, I don't care. You can have a Knicks second-round pick, whatever. Give him a couple nice second-round picks and call it a day.
Yeah, I'd love to see the attitude almost of when we had both Ben and Rasheed Wallace in Detroit.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's what I mean.
That's what I'm looking at. Yeah, because I think it's have the switch athletes, but if you come into my paint, I'm going to hack
athletic bad boys.
I might break your arm. It happens. It's exactly the game.
No, I don't think people get that like this. That's my point. Like, that's kind of my count. It's not like it's an inefficiency, but toughness is kind of an inefficiency right now in the NBA.
We hear
and like heartstrings. Why do you think Memphis can still win? Memphis comes in because every once in a while it just doesn't feel good to get punched.
I know during college basketball games, Fran Fraschilla always talks about junkyard dogs.
Exactly.
They reference like Javon Carter last year. Guys like that really can come in, get in your
Dude, they
face
suck
like
to
that.
play it.
Exactly.
Have you ever played against? I was a point guard in high school, and then like kind of a wing too, but I brought the ball up. And like the worst thing ever was the untalented like wrestler guy who smacked the floor and could just guard you the whole time. Because it wasn't even that he was good; it's that he was always goddamn there.
Yep.
You know, like, and that doesn't matter.
It speeds you up.
And that's my point, is that, like, guys, I'm telling you, there would be something about having a Patrick Beverley come off the bench. And I don't mean get rid of TJ. TJ can still run as this, like, weird combo guy. He knows his job. Right. And more importantly, be a third point guard. But, like, a Patrick Beverley comes to town, guys, and right away, like, you have just that much more dickhead. It's in a good way. Yep. Like, it's not fun to play against him. So, like, I don't think Spencer Dinwiddie has as nice of a night. That's how the margins work in the NBA. We just talked about how superstars affect the game. We shouldn't, like, dismiss how the margins affect the game. And that is the difference with the Rockets. Not just that that Chris Paul might be older. It's not just the Ariza thing. It's that, like, they don't play defense the way they wanted to last year. They're not playing that same level of defense. It's gone. And they probably ran Tucker into the ground and shit like that, to be honest with you.
I'd agree with that. That's what it is. If you get your switch, you get your junkyard dogs, you get a little bit more of that guy that, like you're talking about, the guy you know has less talent than you, but he's going to outwork you. And the minute you have the ball, he's going to be on you all the way up the floor, all the way down the floor. You can't take a play off because he's all over you.
And don't you think we also just need like those NBA, like just like the caliber of an NBA athlete? Like, this isn't a disrespect to Korkmaz. Like, he's been playing fine lately, but there is also something to have more like guys to run with Ben and more guys to just run. Like, and that's my point about the Holiday, the Nwaba types, the guys you're talking, like, just a little bit more juice would be nice. A little bit more guys who could just like, wow, that guy had 18 tonight out of nowhere. That's nice.
Yeah, because we're not asking them to do it every night. It's just
exactly.
Once a week you come off and ball out, have 18. We're pumped. Let's move on. High five.
Hamstrings and foul trouble. You know what I'm saying? We still need to try to win that game in Indiana that night. It's just how that works. You know.
I'm with you.
Cool. Let's end with 3 rapid fire questions. So,
boom.
All right. First, when does the Fultz Sixers era end? If it does. Second, do the Sixers make a trade outside of the buyouts, whether it's Holiday or somebody like that? And then 3. When's the first time, if ever, the Sixers make the NBA Finals with this crew? Start with you, Drew.
You're going to probably repeat them questions because I got caught up trying to think of my answers. You gave me 3. I was like, let's
we'll go one at a time
here, big fella. One at a time.
All right, so Fultz, when, if ever, does he leave Philly?
I like if ever. I like it.
If ever. He's gonna sit on
the. He figures it out, guys.
He's gonna be Sunny Hill. He's gonna be courtside till he's 80.
Yeah.
He and Jack will have seats next to each other every time they hang out with each other. I think, and it's hard for me to put a time frame on it, but I think the Fultz era ends when we can get anything more than a bag of basketballs. I think Jimmy had a great point. If we could trade our mysteriously messed up player for your mysteriously messed up player, we'll happily go for it. I'd say it's probably one of those things that if we can offload him in the offseason, we will. I just don't. I think that relationship's beyond being able to be repaired. I don't think he's got anything wrong with his shoulder, but I'm not a medical expert. I think he's just mentally totally fucked up, can't figure it out, needs to get out of here, and he's just done with Philadelphia.
I think it can be all those things is the thing. You know what I mean? Like, what I mean is, like, it's probably not binary, right? It's probably like chicken and the egg stuff, like whatever happened to him injury-wise. Like, the lack of disclosure and like, the worst part about it is just the mismanagement, the lack of disclosure and transparency and professionalism from his camp. Just like, it's so much bad faith that it's difficult to trust. Like, this diagnosis is real because the team was there present for it. And like, if you read the history of, not to say that if you read it, I'm saying the plural you, if you read like the history of the diagnosis, it's difficult to get to. But to answer your question, I think he's gone. Like you said, I think there is more than a bag of basketballs available. It's not going to be much more, but I think there will be some. If they want to get immediate utility this year, they can do that. I think they could get an Ariza, honestly. Like, I don't see why Phoenix wouldn't do that. Like, something like that. Like, they're not going to get a much better prospect than that, is the point. They might, and really no one's trading you first round picks. They're not getting a first round pick for Trevor Ariza. It'll be a fake one if it is. You know, it'll be a Dallenberg, you know, right? Like, it'll be a Brian Colangelo first. So, like, I think that's my point. My guess would be that he's traded like by like March, like in March. Like, I don't think he ever dribbles. I'd like to see him again on our floor, but I don't think he will. I kind of think it's too mutual at this point, where it's just like, all right, let's move on. And it's kind of like sunk cost type shit, you know, like, don't chase bad money. And like you said, you know, it's about getting them, getting them the money, right? And so that they don't have to do anything dramatic to get off it later. If they can get a functional player now, I think the way they think, if they can get themselves, in theory, Trevor Ariza by giving up Fultz and nothing else, basically, I kind of think they might do that. Just because I don't love Ariza per se. I don't love that deal because I'd like to get something a little bit. For example, I don't know about you guys. I'd rather have Josh Jackson. I know it sounds crazy, but like he at least could just he could just become, like, for us, he wouldn't have to be the number 4 pick. You know what I'm saying? And for them, Fultz doesn't have to be the number 1 pick. For us, he could just be. Don't just hit. All you're going to do is shoot open threes. Never, ever shoot an off-the-dribble 3 in your life. Like, seriously, what I mean is train him to be the Covington. Train him to only shoot catch-and-shoot threes, which are much easier than functioning as a – I watch a lot of the Suns for whatever reason, and he does too much, like – he thinks he does too much, like, creation shit. If he just was told to be a catch-and-shoot guy and a run-and-dunk defender, I think you could get something out of him. Like, I just think that's more interesting to me than just saying, give me Trevor Ariza, because you're not winning a championship this year, so I'd much rather – put yourself in a position where you can get a player over the next 2 years who might be an extreme profit. Like, I could be wrong. He could be nothing, but but again, maybe the question for that is, like, do you want to free that money up, right? So that's the counter to that, right? So yeah, he doesn't make that much less than Fultz, is my point. So, like, it doesn't give us the money solution.
Right, yeah, the relief's not there, but it's
a philosophical thing at that point.
Yeah, I love
it gives you another athlete.
That's my point. That's my point.
What we talked about. We talked about earlier is they're lacking athletes, and we're in an era in the NBA where you have to have the athletes.
And dogs, yeah. And
like, let them play defense. If you shoot the ball 4 times a game, sweet, man, I'm happy. I
can see a world where they tell him, like, bro, you're Andre Robinson, and just show him that Andre Robinson just got $50 million. Do you know what I mean? Be like, MKG got $48 million. It was not that there's a great deals, but my point is, if you can defend in this NBA, if you can defend the perimeter, you'll get money. I just think there's more there, and I think it's also, with how chaotic the Fultz thing has been, it's hard to read what Fultz is. I think it's really hard to tell who you are in Phoenix because of how chaotic it is there. That guy's had like 3 coaches, and he's his second year.
Yeah.
Yep. That's tough to believe. I would also say that Fultz is gone before the deadline. I don't think he puts on a Sixers uniform again. I really hope the best for him, and the Landry Fields case did kind of open my eyes a little bit. The troubles that he had with his grip and how he explained that he really couldn't shoot. I don't know if that's exactly the same thing as Fultz, but it does.
I think it relates.
Yeah, it relates a bit. But I really think maybe in another place it could work out for him. I think the most important thing is getting that money off for 2019, 2020 season, getting a future second or whatever you can get. The second question was, there was one that was, when do the Sixers make the NBA Finals? If they do with this group. I'm going to say take 2 years.
I say next summer.
Next summer. Okay, so the 1920 season?
Yep, I do. This is depending on some nice optimal type moves, but I think, like, Jimmy's bandwidth of being a superstar we're right in the heart of it. He could still give us one of his best seasons, and if Ben makes any type of incremental leap, and if he takes any sort of real leap, then I'm telling you, people are in trouble. I don't think people get, like, how good Ben is. It's kind of silly. Like, he's when he plays his best game, it really helps you win games.
100%. The whole Ben has to learn how to shoot narrative is so overblown. He can do so many things without having a jump shot if he attacks the way he can. And I've been impressed in some of the games. His post game is improving. It's still not, as you mentioned, it's not where it needs to be.
Well, he's got to start down there. His game's got to start inside out more. It's kind of also like what I was saying before. Like, there's too much of that dribble decision shit that's going on with him because you just know he's not going to pull a shot. So at that point, let's just invert the model and go down low. Right. The other thing with Ben too is just free throw volume, free throw rate, right? Like, I know that's the bigger discussion. If he can fix his free throw, and even to the 73 to 75% range, like, now you're weaponizing it, and now it's a plus. Now you're winning on that possession if he's converting at that rate. And it's just like, we're not going to be a very pleasant team to play, is my point. We can rack up a lot of fouls on you really quick. That's not fun. It puts you in bad positions, and that's how you win games. Like, there's no one stat that you win that wins you games. But think about this: we're the best defensive rebounding team in the league, right? And we're going to win. Right now, we're not creating enough turnovers, right? We're not doing the Covington thing. But if we can get back to that, to being like that fast break, crazy kind of chaos team, I just think we can hit you with 2 different haymakers. We can hit you with, you can't stop Joel Embiid tonight, and then if you properly set it up, I guess my long story short was about the Ben thing. The inefficiency with Ben is that they haven't put him around always the proper lineups. He's a very sensitive player that way, right? He's like lactose intolerant. I mean, he's like, what I mean by that is he's non-shooter intolerant. Like, you can't put him on the floor with other non-shooters. It falls apart because the NBA is too smart. Like, even shitty, like, baseball teams know how to use the shift now. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the league's too smart for you to play that anymore. And so that's why the Fultz thing was so destructive. And that's why this roster now is destructive. We can't insulate Ben enough with more shooters. Like, it's the Orlando Dwight Howard theory. Just, like, give him 7 shooters, and that's what we need to do. We need to put a cajillion good shooters around Ben and Joe, and we'll be great.
I'm 100% on board with that. I don't know who we got to talk to about making these deals happen. I think we've got this covered, how to fix the NBA. But to kind of answer your question, Dave, I think, I guess, as Jimmy was saying, the Jimmy Butler kind of window is now. It's kind of now. You got a year or two.
That was now. We can admit it. It's like
yeah.
You would expect, like mathematically, you would expect these next 2 years, including so this year and the next 2 years. So we have 3 playoff runs. Those are kind of what you expect them to be his highest influential playoff runs, right? So that is going to affect them, right? Like meaning their decision making.
Yeah, we're in a win now model. It's not hey 2021. I'm feeling great. I still feel good about 2021, but
that's the point. Yeah, that's the beauty of it is because of Ben and Joel under control for so long. You do have that beautiful, that's what I think people have to understand too. Is that Jimmy's not going to be the only third guy they ever play with. So don't, this isn't the only narrative. As long as Ben isn't ever run out of town by the morons, especially with the financial leverage the Sixers will have. I just think as long as you keep those guys around, there's going to be multiple times. I'm not being casual about it. What I'm trying to say is that's the beauty of it, is what I meant. Is that how kind of episodic this could be, right?
Yes, and I don't think I don't think to use a baseball narrative that we're Florida Marlins, we make one run and blow it up. We've got an opportunity here to really make something happen because we've got 2 young, honestly, superstars between Embiid and Simmons. They're just straight nasty and only going to get better, which is what makes this process so exciting. And now you've got Jimmy Butler, who came in, contributes, can really make a great third star for us. And now we can go and say, hey, let's put some shooters with him. We've got JJ still in the corner banging threes all day. God, I love JJ.
They need to replace him. I think that's probably one of the biggest next concerns or narratives for them is they've structured their offense so much around his DHO and screen game that, think about it. Shamet is the backup JJ, right? He's what I mean by this is that who's the next JJ I think is going to be a big narrative too for this team. Who's the next great volume shooter? The other thing too is we should have more than one great volume shooter. I know that sounds greedy, but even a Wayne Ellington type. I mean, that's why Justin Holiday. Justin, like I said about Justin Holiday, the reason he's making so many threes is because he's taking so many threes. He's taking more threes than JJ. He's taking 7.8 threes per game.
Do it, but and like I said, and really, ultimately, the question. I think next year is a good chance to make a run. We'll kind of see how the offseason shakeups with whether Kawhi sticks around, all those kind of how some of the free agency stuff moves around. But I guess the iron's hot. I say we can hit it next year. We were close this past year. This year's going to be the East is pretty strong. So
it is.
You get on a lot of it.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that the East is strong. Meaning it's going to metal sharpens metal. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I'd rather play good teams than not get to the finals and get our ass beat because you're I haven't played anybody and now I'm going to get murdered.
Right.
So I think it's definitely times now. If I would say we at least make the Eastern Conference Finals next year, if not the finals, definitely by 2020.
I like it. I remember the other question. So the last question here is
great job, Dave.
Yeah. So last question is, do they make a trade before the deadline, or is it really just going to be supplementing with buyout guys? Jimmy, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, they make a trade because there's just too many needs, and I think because they have the trade exemption, they almost they'd be dumb not to because I think it expires. So I think they're going to take on at least one of those minimum type guys. Those Malik, it wouldn't be Malik Beasley because Denver can't do that. But my point is that type of guy, an under $3 million guy who might be able to help you this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they took on even a bigger piece of money because there is an argument to be made for them to go into the offseason over the cap because then that allows them to use their full mid-level and do the things with non-guaranteed contracts that Houston has done before. And it wouldn't actually meaning what I mean by that is take on money to put you over the cap just for this year.
Right.
Go into the summer with say Vukovic's cap hold. I'm making that up. I'm saying a number that's 13 or Ariza's cap hold. You understand what I'm saying? That's why he's interesting is because he puts you over the cap and then you can operate over the cap. And when you operate over the cap, it sounds crazy, but when you're between the cap and the luxury tax threshold, you can get creative and do weird shit. And that's where I think the Sixers. Here's the point. Our only veteran minimum player this year really is Amir Johnson. Where the hell are not ring chasers, but just the guys who want to be on good teams? Do you know what I mean? And so that's what I'm saying is I think next year if we can maximize, and I think Elton will get that more. I think Elton does get how shallow this is. I just do. I just think he gets how thin this is. And the players do. I mean, for God's sakes, our superstar last night was we can't guard guards. It was I think the message is clear.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're going to be really aggressive in the buyout market too. I think Brand signaled he's definitely on the train to getting this in contention sooner than later. He's not waiting around with the Butler trade. So I think they'll be very aggressive and probably bring in maybe one trade and maybe 2 or 3 buyout guys and see who earns minutes there.
I can't wait to overreact, to be honest with you.
Oh, I know. I remember when the Heat had their big 3 and they were looking at like Mike Bibby, and that was a huge deal. And
what's that I mean? Like the fringe deals are fun. Like Corey Joseph, for example, is very interesting to me. Like Windhorst mentioned him just recently being available because they want to get more time for Aaron Holiday, right? Like they I think they realize that like it makes sense to like, meaning he might even be better than Darren Collison right now, Holiday. And so more importantly, Corey Joseph would be perfect for the Sixers. Perfect. I don't know why the Pacers would help the Sixers, but he'd be perfect.
Yeah, agreed. Drew, do you see any trades coming up?
Oh, they have to make a move. If you can't sit with the status quo at this point, I think Elton showed that he's willing to pull the trigger and make some moves. So let's make some moves. We have the worst bench in the league. We've got minutes available, so we've got opportunities. And as you were saying, Jimmy, like operating between the budget and over the cap and between the luxury tax threshold is the place to work. Most teams do. Most successful teams have to do that. So it's not one of those like, hey, we got $50 million weight and we're good to go. That works on the rebuild part. We're not rebuilding. This isn't
exactly. We're in a different part of the phase. Exactly. We haven't been here before. Like this is new like for all the process shit we talk. This is a new part. Like we knew that part of team building. You know what I mean? Like we felt invested and comfortable.
Hey man, I need that $50 million. 49's not going to cut it. Where it's hey, spend all the money you got. Let's spend some money. If it means winning a ring, we got to pay some luxury tax. We'll make some GoFundMe page. We'll get it done. Like let's go.
It seems like Kyle Weed to the Clippers is almost like written in stone. It really does. I know it sounds crazy because he's in Toronto, but I just think the guy just doesn't give a shit. I think he's going to be in. I really do. But goddamn, can you imagine? Like that's the ultimate dream. Can you imagine if that guy signed with the Sixers? Because that big four I guarantee you, we would become the if not the favorites, like right there with the Warriors for the championship. Because it's just too much firepower.
Yep, I agree.
You can't tease me with a dream like that.
No, I know what I'm saying. Like, can you imagine? Because you know what I mean by that is that like the rest of the Twitter off season would just be like crazy like asshole tweets from Woj about like which crazy like Thad Young signed the vet minimum with us. Like guys who should be signing the vet minimum with us. You know what I mean? Like
they just want the opportunity of it's here comes the. Then you start playing can the Sixers win 74 games?
Yeah, you're like Terrence Ross took the mid level with the Sixers. You're like what? You're like, yep.
Oh, then you just become giddy. It's like you're sitting there going,
a girl can dream. A girl can dream.
Oh God, don't tease me. So good.
This is awesome. All right, well, thank you so much, Jimmy. This was great to talk Sixers, and we appreciate all the time you gave us.
It's talking Sixers. It's easy.
Definitely. Let's hope the rest of the season goes well. Maybe we'll catch up with you in the playoffs.
Yeah, feel free to hit me up. I'm around, guys, and obviously, my new thing is enjoy the process. Like
I like that.
Trusting the process was awesome, but like at some point, it's like we got to stop. First of all, we got to stop treating this like NFL outcomes every night. Like this isn't like
there are 82 games. Each one isn't
like we're not a half game behind the Cowboys. Like it's like relax, okay? Like we have like 17 games with Atlanta or something left. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just joking, but like it's gonna be okay. It's exciting to me though too. Like I think we have to appreciate the process and enjoy the process because right now, like things are messed up, but I think it's gonna be exciting when the next new guy comes in or like a mess. You know, it was fun. Like don't get me wrong. Like I never wanted Marco to stay, but it was really fun to have like a new experience and a new, like the buyout market and getting trades is fun because it brings a new like spice to the dish you've been eating. And this team needs it more than ever. But I'm excited for that. Is my point. And like I think we complain about it a lot, not like you or me, but like. People just get so like kind of weird and nasty about it. It's like, guys, it's gonna happen. Like, what do you mean? People playing like get a player. It's like, do you actually think they're just gonna see if this works until June? like it's like, guys, like relax, like a little bit. It's like almost like the Phillies thing too right now, or just in general, baseball off seasons or any off seasons. It's like everybody, shut up. Like JD Martinez signed in February last year. It's like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, the unknown of the buyout market is pretty interesting.
It's awesome, and because it's also
we just don't know.
You know why too? Because it is empowerment of the player. Like because here's the buyout market's more robust than ever in my theory too. Because the player empowerment is so important that like when a team like Dallas wants to shift gears, it looks bad around the league if they're going to take a respected vet like Matthews and just bury him. So it's a better compliment to him to say, here, Wes. Go find a playoff team, and we'll make sure we send you into the market before the playoff roster cutoff. You know what I mean? Like, and my point in that is, so it's before March, whatever it is. My point is that like there's more leverage on the player side and kind of the culture side for the player to like make sure the NBA guys treat them right. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, those vets have more incentive ever to be like, guys, this isn't working out. I've enjoyed it. Let me out. You know.
Yeah.
And more teams are willing to do it because more teams are willing to turn their portfolio over to their younger roster. So I just think it'll be interesting to see how that works for the Sixers in their favor. Because Wes Matthews, to me, I keep mentioning him. If you added like Justin Holiday for 2 seconds and Wes Matthews for free, whew, like, do you know that both of those guys shoot over 40% on catch and shoot threes the last 3 years in a row? It's like, that's like exactly what we need.
Exactly. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Jimmy, remind everyone where they can find your work on Twitter.
@_ Jimmy McCormick. I do. I'm publishing at Fantasy NBA now, like 6 days a week for ESPN. It's fun, like it's fantasy centric, but they give me a lot of freedom to just talk about the league too.
I found that it helps my NBA knowledge too. We started doing Dynasty Fantasy NBA this year.
Because you know depth charts now, and you know rotations even too, and you'll notice like who's getting time or who's playing well before the public would, right? Yeah. Like you can say to yourself like, damn, Terrence Ross is killing it lately. Like nobody like generally would know that outside of like him hitting 50-footers against the Sixers. But my point being, he's actually legitimately like averaging like 17 points the last like 6 weeks. It's not like a small sample. Like it is a small sample. My point is he's playing well. And you notice those things in fantasy. So I think it does inform you. And it's also just like, it's more like fantasy baseball. It's a grind. It's nerdy. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I love it too. Cool. Thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah, can't thank you enough, Jimmy. Appreciate you.
Awesome, guys. Enjoy the process.